guys? Welcome back to my channel and welcome to the first movie review I've done in like 2 years. I mean, it's been a long time, with COVID and everything, it just kind of took a hit on my channel and obviously the movie industry as a whole. So, but I'm glad to be back here, and especially with one of my best friends here, Mr. Alex Premo. How are you
Hello,
doing?
Nathaniel. Thank you for having me on the show.
Absolutely,
Very excited to be
man.
here.
No, and I'm so glad that I specifically have you on here because I went, for those of you who didn't know, I went through all the Bond movies last year with my mom, and basically every time I finished them, I called this guy up right here, and we would talk, because this man is a pretty big James Bond fan, as you can probably see from his screen right there.
Yeah, as you can see, I brought the box set here on Blu-ray, all the movies on Blu-ray, so I had to have all the Bonds here with us today.
It's very fitting, and I'm glad you have it in your frame there. So
thanks.
But yeah, so this is let's say this movie was a long time coming. Of course, the film we're talking about today is No Time to Die, which is directed by Karijoy Fukunawa and starring Daniel Craig as his last outing as James Bond. And this was so anticipated for so many reasons, just obviously because Daniel Craig, a lot of people consider him to be the greatest Bond on film, and plus the fact that there's delay after delay after delay. I mean, how many times was this movie delayed? I don't even remember.
Well, there was the original when Danny Boyle left the film, it got delayed. That was the first time. And then after COVID, it was probably 5 times maybe.
Yeah, no, that seems about right, which is crazy to think, because like some movies got delayed like 2 or 3 times, but never to the extent of this film. And it was one of those things, it's like, is it ever going to come out? But luckily it came out a couple weeks ago, and I think we both had to really kind of marinate on how we felt about this film. This is a great experience for me, because this is my first time seeing a Bond film in the theater, because obviously, as I said, I wasn't really into the franchise before that. So It was really great, and seeing it twice especially really gave me a lot of clarity. And what about you, Primo, though? Because obviously you saw it twice. And
yeah, I saw it twice. I thought the first time I came out of it, I'm like, that was a really good movie. I was really overwhelmed by the experience of just finally getting to see it, and just like, it was so much to take in at one time. But the second time, I really enjoyed it. This is a very special film for Daniel Craig.
Oh, absolutely. And honestly, I really liked it the first time too, but there was some things about it that I just didn't quite understand. Some things about it I still don't quite understand. But
I'm right with you there, but
yeah. But I tell you, there's while it has very noticeable flaws throughout the course of the film, I gotta tell you, watching this again, this is one of my absolute favorite Bond movies. And I think the reason why is just what they were able to do, not only Daniel Craig, but the writers throughout this whole thing, just what they were able to do with that character, because nothing was ever done like this with Bond before. He was always one of the, just the guy who would go off and, hook up with women and really, kind of disregard them. And he really wasn't a character, except for the fact that he just kind of had these traits that we came to know and came to expect out of these films. But Craig's take on Bond is so three-dimensional, and obviously, he was always been set up to be the vulnerable Bond, and I think what they do with him in this movie is just very, very bold choices narratively to take. Probably the bold, and I think you'd agree with me, the boldest choices ever made for
absolutely
any interpretation of Bond. And I think that's what makes it so great, is just them bringing back because 15 years, right, of these movies, and the way they're able to tie almost all of them in so well. It just really shows how much care they put into this movie, despite a few oversights in the script.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, the film is, it's 2 hours and 43 minutes, almost 3 hours, but it never misses a beat. I mean, it's just so entertaining. It's just, I'm so glad that this is the film that we got, because it really is enjoyable.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing that's so great about it. And I know some people think the length, the length really bothered them. I don't see any
Mm.
problem with it whatsoever.
No, both times it flew right by for me. I don't know about you.
Well, I think the only part that kind of lulls is near the end. When they're
Really?
when they're at the lair of sorts. Because I mean, obviously, I'll get to my negatives with the film a little bit later, but I just got to say, the writers obviously they brought on Phoebe Waller-Bridge, and obviously you have Neil Purvis and Robert Wade, who I believe wrote all the other Craig movies, right?
Yep. They've written everyone since The World Is Not Enough. So they've done 2 Brosnan movies too.
Oh wow! So they
Yeah.
really have a legacy
Yeah.
in the Bond. That's awesome. So maybe they'll come on and do the next one. I'm not sure,
hmm
but yeah, of course, Carrie Joy Fukunaga came on to do this one as well, and yeah. So I really think that they did a great. Like, there's definitely elements of the script that don't, like, obviously there's certain themes that they're going for, but nothing in representation, but nothing ever feels forced. And I that's
Yeah.
the thing. I think a lot of the new additions in this movie are just incredible. Like, well, I think Lashana Lynch is Nomi was a bit underused, but when she's on screen, she really does. She's a pretty memorable character and a Bond girl, if you will. But if that
hmm
is even such a thing, and of course we have to talk about Ana de Armas, not only because she's your girlfriend, but because the
Oh,
scenes that
yes.
the scenes that she's in. I mean, it's so interesting, her take on her character, because not only is she just extremely sexy, but she's not she's very bubbly. She's not like that very sultry kind of mysterious
hmm
Bond girl that you see. She's very giddy and almost very new to her job, and it's a really interesting take. And she's definitely one of the most interesting Bond girls I've seen in any of the movies.
She was fantastic in this, and a lot of the reviews I've read have said the same thing.
Mhm.
It's like you were saying, she has that great energy. She's like, this is my first real job. I've only done this for 3 weeks, and it brings this really sort of exciting energy to the scenes that wouldn't be there otherwise. But I mean, her scene is great. She looks awesome with those guns, and like her shooting the people on the floor was just awesome. It was great.
Hmm. No, absolutely, man. And of course, you have veterans, like they brought Jeffrey Wright back as Felix Leiter, who's probably the best actor to play that
Yeah.
character. And then of course you have Naomi Harris and Ben Whishaw as Moneypenny and Q respectively, who are always great and always
hmm
have been. I mean, two of the most consistent mainstays of the Daniel Craig era for sure. And of course, Ray Fiennes is always great as M, and he has a little bit of an interesting plot in this story as well. And of course, I will say the biggest improvement on Spectre was Lea Seydoux, because I think
Yes.
the big problem I had with Spectre is I didn't feel that chemistry between her and Bond, or her character Madeleine and Bond, like I did with Bond and Vesper in Casino Royale. So I think that this film really cements that relationship. And I mean, do they ever? If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm
Right.
talking about. But their chemistry is just great together. And of course, I have to talk about Daniel Craig in his final performance as Bond. I mean, this man gives it his all. I don't think it's his best performance as Bond, but man, it's so good. I really, as we were talking about the depth he brought to this character, and this was the first Bond movie. I'll say it. This is the first Bond movie I ever really cried at, and I never thought I would ever say that about any Bond movie. And I think maybe that's why I hold this film in such high regard, is how emotionally invested I was. By the end of the movie, I was just absolutely enthralled by it.
Yeah. I mean, I think back on all the other movies, and the only one that I think could maybe do that is Honor Majesties. But I mean, clearly they wanted people to cry when they made this movie, and it's to get that sort of emotional response out of a James Bond film is incredible. I think a lot
No,
of
I
people aren't expecting that.
I absolutely agree with you 100% on that one. And I also, but I do have to talk about some things though. Well, I will say a few more things they're really great. The title sequence is one of the best title sequences in the entire franchise.
And the Eilish song fits so well with the visuals. It
Oh
was
my goodness.
fantastic.
The Eilish song is one of the best Bond themes. I'd put it in the top 10 even. And just especially knowing Billie Eilish as an artist and as a person, the way it draws parallels to her life and the way it draws parallels to the narrative of Bond. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so seamless. And I think that goes to show just how great Billy and Phineas are as songwriters. But obviously, this isn't a music review. This is a movie review. So that's all I'll say on that. But I also have to mention just the callbacks to certain movies in the franchise just works so well. And you wouldn't think that doing that would necessarily be ideal when you're doing a different Bond film, you know, maybe it takes you out of it, but no, it adds so much even emotional weight to the film, and I really wasn't anticipating that at all.
Yeah, I won't go into spoilers for people that haven't seen it, but there's a certain line that Bond says in probably the first 10 minutes of the film when he's driving the Aston Martin. As soon as he says that line and you know where that line comes from, you know exactly what kind of movie this is going to be. So, yeah, I mean, the callbacks really fit in well, I thought.
Absolutely, man. And you know, there's just so much that's great about them. Action is really great. You know, there's so much about this movie that works. But there's some stuff in this film that you know, I can't really turn my eye from. And I think the biggest, you know, weakness of this movie, and I hate to say this because I love the actor so much, is Rami Malek as Safin. I think that
Yeah.
he is one of the worst Bond villains, easily the worst of the Craig era. And it isn't like he's as ridiculous as what like what's a really bad Bond villain? Oh, it's not like the villain in Die Another Day or anything like that,
Yeah.
right? He's just so dull and he's so unoriginal. His plan makes absolutely no sense at all.
hmm
And it's very the motivation is very very thin, and I'm sure you have quite a bit quite a bit to say on that because I think you probably agree with me that that was the weakest element of the film.
Absolutely. That's really what's holding the film back, I think, from being one of the best Bond films ever. It's just, I mean, basically to parrot what you said, it's his plan doesn't make any sense at all. And that hurts the viewer because we're rooting for Bond, but we don't know why. You know, we don't know why he wants to take this guy down, but we just know he's bad, so we do anyway.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
I feel like a few more lines of dialogue was all that was needed just to sort of spell out what was going on.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, because there was, I mean, there's almost a 3 hour runtime. They could have thrown something in there that kind of connected the dots, if you will, or kind of fleshed out his character a bit more. But he's like, no, I want revenge. You know, it's just so
hmm
uninteresting and boring. And also, I think this isn't really a spoiler. I think because obviously, you know, there's going to be explosions and you know there's going to be action in Bond movies. Bond should have died like 3 times or more in the movie,
yeah,
and it was just like he was like getting stuff was blowing up right in front of him, and
yeah.
he would just blow back. His ears would go out for like a few
hmm
seconds. You know, that was all that happened. I found that a bit ridiculous. And another thing I wasn't really a fan of is we were talking about great callbacks earlier in the film, but there's some that kind of are very reminiscent of the Roger Moore era of Bond, kind of the humor, and I think especially for you know the Craig take on Bond, I just don't think they fit at all.
Yeah,
Really took me out of the movie.
it's interesting. I rewatched all those movies consecutively, like each night leading up to this one. I think the stuff you're talking about works for this film in itself, but I think about Casino Royale and like Quantum of Solace, and then I think about this movie, and they almost feel like they're in like two different universes. You
Sure.
know?
Yeah, and it definitely feels like they were trying to go after that old kind of you know villain with Olaire. You know, like it just didn't feel
Yeah.
right where you have someone like Dominic Green in Quantum of Solace who's literally just a businessman.
Yeah.
There's nothing, and there's nothing intimidating about him. He doesn't have any facial scars or whatever. He's just a guy. And then obviously like the Chief has facial scars or whatever, but really there's a lot of depth to his character. He's not just like this bad trying to get Bond just to get him, or plan of world domination. And I still probably the best villain in the whole series, I would argue. Or Silva too, who's just incredible.
Hmm.
So I just think that there's a lot about certain decisions they made, and certain things that they were trying to squeeze into the Craig era of Bond that just didn't work. And I just think some of the lines were pretty stupid. They just came off as really
Yeah.
cheesy. But then again, I mean, I think there's so much great stuff here that it kind of puts it, all my qualms with it aside. I just think it really is a fantastic way for Craig to, bid adieu to Bond. And I think one of the best films in the franchise, and one of the best films I've seen so far in 2021, really.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just ecstatic that the film wasn't a disappointment, because after waiting for so long, I was a little bit worried there for a second when reviews were a little bit mixed, mostly positive. But after I saw it for myself, I mean, it's just, I mean, it is one of the best films I've seen this year for sure.
Yeah, man. Well, I guess on that note, what would you give this film on a scale of 1 to 10?
Well, No Time to Die, for all its faults, is still, I mean, it's one of the best Bond films. I still think it's probably in the top 10 for me. So it's got some plot issues, but overall, really entertaining. Great goodbye for Daniel Craig. I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10 for right now. I think that could go up with time, but for now, that's where it stands.
Wow, man. Wow. I was surprised how low your score was compared to mine coming in here, because I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. I just think, as I said, everything, there's so much greatness here that it just can't be ignored. Wonderful way for Craig to say farewell to Bond. So yeah, that's the review. Our review of No Time to Die. I'm glad that we finally got to talk about this. Primo, thank you for joining me today. And where can
You're very
everybody
welcome.
find you?
Instagram, Facebook. Instagram is aprimo99 if you're interested. So yeah.
All right. Well, hey guys, thanks for tuning in to this review of No Time to Die, and I assure you that we will be back with more reviews very soon. Take it easy, guys. See you later.
Bye, everyone.